The envelope appeared unassuming, not a sign of trouble. It was just thick enough to catch your attention, made of smooth ivory stock. The weight was something you sensed in your fingers before even opening it. That morning, it slipped through my mail slot quietly while I was folding towels still warm from the dryer. The air was faintly scented with lavender and dryer sheets. I recall this vividly because it was the last normal moment before everything fell apart. It was from the Connecticut Department of Health Vital Records Division. Initially, I thought it might be a bureaucratic error, perhaps a form I had neglected to sign. Yet, my name was typed on the front, Claire Elaine Whitmore. I hadn't used my full name on anything since leaving Stanford 3 years prior. I sat down at the kitchen counter, clearing away a chipped coffee mug and a magazine I didn't subscribe to, and opened it with the back of a butter knife. Inside was a death certificate, officially stamped in blue ink with a raised seal. Deceased Claire Elaine Whitmore, date of death June 12, 2020, cause of death accidental drowning, location Tulum, Mexico. I didn't scream or even blink, but my hands turned cold, a chill that started in my fingertips and crept up as if my body was pulling everything inward to cope with something too surreal to comprehend. I checked the birth date, mine, and the social security number, also mine. Even the last known address listed was my old place on Water Street. I wasn't dead, but someone had gone to great lengths to make it official, indicating this wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. I picked up my phone and called the only person I still trusted, Maya Greer. She had been my roommate at Parsons and was now a legal consultant for estate law in New Haven. Sharp, grounded, and never rattled. She answered on the second ring. "Claire?" "I just got a death certificate," I said. Silence followed, then I heard her breathe. "In your name?" "Yes. Filed in Hartford, dated June 2020. Another longer pause. "You need to come in," she said quietly. I glanced at the envelope again. It wasn't merely a document. It was a message. I hadn't even reached the part that mentioned who filed it. Mexico wasn't my idea. That had been my father's doing. Russell Whitmore was never a man who raised his voice. He didn't need to. He had a way of expressing himself that sounded like options, but felt like orders. "You need space, Claire," he'd said. "You've been tense, unfocused. Take a sabbatical. Clear your head. Don't worry, we'll cover it." I should have known better. It was May of 2020, just a couple of months into the pandemic. I'd been freelancing in New York, trying to establish my own design firm after leaving Whitmore & Sons, the family's real estate business. They claimed I was squandering my degree. I argued I was preserving my name. The flight to Tulum was serene, the hotel elegant and minimal. Just my style, too perfect in hindsight. The first day felt like a breath. By the second, my bank card failed. I contacted the bank, but they reported no issues on their end, suggesting it was a local glitch. By day 3, my phone stopped working. The SIM card failed to register, with no incoming or outgoing calls. The hotel manager suddenly couldn't find my reservation in the system and politely asked me to leave. By the time I found reliable Wi-Fi at a small cafe, I had been off-grid for nearly a week. No messages from family, no missed calls, no "Are you okay?" Nothing. I sent emails, texted Maya, even messaged my sister Ivy with just a dot and a question mark. I received no response, and that's when something inside me bent. Not shattered, just quietly folded inward like a bridge. Straining under weight, I booked a last-minute flight to Houston, then to a friend's apartment in Portland. I didn't inform anyone, not because I was hiding, but because they had already stopped looking for me. I buried the memory like an unpaid invoice, unread, and shoved to the back of a drawer. For years, I convinced myself it was paranoia, miscommunication. Maybe they thought I needed more space. Perhaps I had made it too easy to forget me. But now, sitting in my kitchen with the death certificate in hand, it was no longer a theory. They hadn't just forgotten me, they had erased me, and it began the moment I left the country. I had met Caleb Dawson once when I was 19. Back then, he was merely the man in the gray suit who managed my grandmother's estate. I recalled his voice. Low, slow, measured like a metronome, and the scent of his office, dried paper and peppermint oil. That scent hadn't changed. He looked up when I entered. "Claire, in the flesh," I said, and because I didn't trust myself to sit still, I remained standing. He gestured to a chair, and I took it, Placing the death certificate on his desk, he read it slowly, expression unreadable. "I never believed it," he finally said, but I also never had proof otherwise. "I'm here now," I replied, "and I need to know what they've taken." He opened a leather folder, its edges thick and worn by time. Inside were copies of my grandmother's trust documents. Elaine Margot Whitmore, founder of Whitmore and Sons, and the only person in that family who ever regarded me as anything other than an accessory. "She left you her personal estate," Caleb said. $6 million tax optimized plus the Vermont property. But she added conditions. He paused. "You must be legally alive at the time of transfer, and you must not be involved in any capacity with the family business." "That sounds like her," I said. She believed being born a Whitmore was already a burden enough. He nodded. "But there's one more thing." He pulled out a document from the folder and slid it toward me. Clause 17, Dormant Status Provision. If the named beneficiary is presumed deceased or fails to respond to probate summons within 3 years of the grantor's death, the estate reverts to the residual Whitmore Family Trust. Deadline, May 27th, 2024. I calculated in my mind 92 days. That's how long I had left. If I didn't reverse the death certificate, restore my legal identity, and validate the inheritance before then, the entire estate would legally belong to my father and brother. They hadn't merely erased me out of revenge, they had done it for access, and they had almost succeeded. Caleb handed me a copy of the trust and leaned back. "I can help you file, Claire, but this won't be quiet." "I don't need quiet," I said. "I need daylight." He offered a small, sad smile. "Then start digging and be careful. They've had a 3-year head start." I left his office with 2 folders in my bag, one containing the terms of my grandmother's trust, and the other a reminder that somewhere out there, my name was already being spoken of in the past tense. The next envelope was hand-delivered, cream-colored, and embossed with the seal of the Connecticut Probate Court. It arrived just after 9 a.m., while I was adding sticky notes to a timeline that Maya and I had drafted on my dining table the night before. Inside was a petition for emergency conservatorship filed by Russell Whitmore and Jacob Whitmore, citing ongoing delusional behavior, paranoia, emotional instability, and inability to manage financial decisions. There was a note in my father's handwriting clipped to the front. It wasn't personal, just factual, as if he were documenting a malfunction. "We believe Claire is a danger to her own legacy. Her refusal to acknowledge reality is affecting the family's integrity." I didn't laugh. I didn't cry either. I simply folded the document once, then again, and placed it on the table. I then walked calmly to the kitchen sink and vomited, not because I believed any of it, but because I recognized every word. They weren't concocting new lies. They were weaponizing old ones. Back in 2020 in Mexico, I spent 3 nights in a private clinic after a panic episode brought on by heat exhaustion and loss of my passport. It wasn't a breakdown, it wasn't psychosis, it was shock, and my family quietly paid the bill, then never mentioned it again, until now. Maya arrived 20 minutes later, saw my face, and didn't ask. She simply picked up the envelope, scanned the header, and exhaled through her nose. "We'll need your medical records," she said. "I still have them," I replied. I kept the originals. "Good. We'll also need a counterstatement from the clinic. I already called. They'll overnight it." Her mouth twitched between a smile and a frown. "You're good at this," she said. "No," I replied. "I just know how far they'll go." We worked in silence the rest of the morning, organizing files and labeling every interaction. We weren't preparing for a court case. We were preparing for war. By noon, my sister Ivy showed up, the last person I expected to see. Her hair was pinned back, neat and proper, just like our mother used to wear it, but her hands trembled as she clutched a manila envelope to her chest. "I shouldn't be here," she whispered. I said nothing, just stepped aside and let her in. The address was scrawled in Ivy's handwriting, barely legible as if she hadn't intended to keep it. Walker Storage Facility, Bridgeport, Unit C21, 3rd floor. No camera coverage, no windows, the kind of place you'd forget existed unless you were paid to remember. "Are you sure this is real?" Maya asked as we pulled up. I nodded. If they're funneling money through shell companies, they had to keep physical copies somewhere, and Russell never trusted cloud storage. With us was Eli Martinez, a forensic accountant Maya had worked with on a fraud case 2 years prior. Quiet, blunt, and brilliant. He carried a hard case with cables, backup drives, and a portable scanner that looked more military than legal. 2 hours, he said, in and out. Inside, the air was thick with dust, cardboard, and toner. We climbed a stairwell that groaned under our weight. Every step sounded like we were entering a place not meant to be revisited. Unit C21 was behind a rusted metal door. No lock, just a broken latch and silence. Eli opened a dented file cabinet in the corner, 5th drawer down, revealing a red folder labeled Archive 9 Client Risk Reports. Inside were copies of loan agreements with Eclipse Finance forged with my name, transfers to Legacy Recovery LLC, a Delaware-registered shell company, and a passport scan that looked eerily real except for one detail. I had never renewed my passport that year. Here, Eli said, pointing to a line on one document. Borrower, Claire E. Whitmore, amount $2.4 million, jurisdiction, British. Virgin Islands. They used your identity to move funds through offshore accounts, Eli muttered, structured just below mandatory reporting thresholds. It's textbook laundering, and it only works if you're dead. He flipped the page. There it was, a memo from Jacob Whitmore to someone named Bernard Lake, the family's corporate counsel, with the subject line, Phase 2, discredit plus invalidate. If she resurfaces, we go psychiatric. We already have Alan on standby. Doctor. Alan Kersner was the name on the fake psychiatric evaluation. My breath caught in my throat. Not from fear, but from the quiet confirmation that this had never been about concern. It had always been about containment. Eli copied the files onto 3 drives, each labeled and sealed, one for Caleb, one for the AG's office, and one for insurance. We exited the building in silence. Some truths are too big to voice out loud. The first time I sat in the car, staring at the plastic case in my lap, I whispered, "They didn't just try to erase me, they built an empire out of my disappearance." The rain that morning was light but steady enough to turn the courthouse steps into mirrors. I saw myself in each one. Black coat, hair tied back, eyes steady, and over it all, the unfinished blazer I had once designed but never dared to wear. The courtroom was on the 4th floor of the Fairfield County Probate Court. A clerk glanced, up as Maya and I entered, eyes widening but remaining silent. Behind me, Caleb walked in, followed by Eli, who held a sealed evidence envelope. We weren't there for spectacle, we were there for correction. But once I stepped into the hallway, the atmosphere shifted, conversations hushed, a woman dropped her pen, and someone near the window whispered, "That's her." Phones rose like reflexes. The dead daughter had returned. At the courtroom door stood Russell Whitmore in a navy suit, exuding a stillness bordering on contempt. Beside him, my brother Jacob paced like a tightly wound man, and my mother Charlotte trailed behind them, pearl earrings and gray trench coat, not a single wrinkle out of place. She looked up as I approached, didn't blink, didn't speak, just looked. Then she said, soft and cold, "Claire, not you're alive, not how, just my name, as if it had never been missing." I passed them without hesitation and entered the courtroom. The clerk behind the desk froze halfway through filing papers. "I'm here to file a motion," I stated clearly, "to revoke a death certificate issued in error and to reinstate my legal identity." He stared, then slowly reached for the folder in front of him. Caleb spoke next. "We have documentation, ID, travel records, medical files, notarized letters from both myself and the attending physician from Vermont General." The judge, a woman with steel gray hair and square glasses, adjusted her seat. "This is unusual," she remarked, "but not unprecedented," Maya added smoothly. Then Russell stepped forward, tone measured. "This is clearly an emotional disruption, Your Honor. We, my wife and I, were informed by professionals that Claire was compromised. She disappeared for years." "She disappeared," I interjected, cutting him off, "because she was erased." He didn't flinch, folding his hands behind his back as if we were in a boardroom, not a courtroom. The judge looked from him to me. "To be clear," she said, "you are asserting that your death was falsely declared and that legal documents were submitted under fraudulent pretenses?" "Yes, Your Honor," I confirmed, "and I have the evidence." She paused. "This matter will require identity verification through official channels. 30 days. You will return." Then the gavel fell. Motion recorded. Hearing continued. Room adjourned. I turned once more toward those who called themselves my family. "You buried me on paper," I said softly, "and I'm here to show you how I dig." Then I walked out, the blazer firmly on my shoulders, and for the first time in years, I wasn't wearing anything borrowed. The second hearing was held 31 days later, long enough for the media to catch wind of the story, but not long enough for the rumors to settle. They labeled me the ghost heir, sometimes the daughter who returned, but they never referred to me by my full name. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was different, not shocked, but expectant. The air was tight, heavy with the sound of paper, shuffling, heels clicking, and phones set to silent but always watching. I sat between Maya and Caleb, a folder of documents in my lap, while across from us, Russell appeared bored. Jacob tapped his foot under the table like a boxer waiting for the bell, and Charlotte stared straight ahead, palms folded, wedding band twisting slightly on her finger. In the back row, Ivy sat alone. The judge entered. Case number 2483. Whitmore versus Whitmore. Motion to reverse declare death and restore legal identity. Maya stood first, then Caleb, followed by me. We walked the court through everything. The forged death certificate, the fake psych evaluation written by a doctor who had never met me, the shell companies, the wire transfers, the $2.4 million loan tied to a forged passport, and the memo marked Phase 2, discredit plus invalidate. Then it was Ivy's turn. She approached the witness stand, manila envelope clutched tightly, her voice trembling just once. "I found this in Dad's home office." She handed the judge a printed email thread between my father and their legal consultant with the subject. Line, "If she resurfaces." The judge read in silence, then looked back at me. "Miss Whitmore," she said, "do you wish to address the court?" I stood slowly. "I didn't die," I said. "I disappeared because that felt safer than staying. I disappeared because silence was the only way I knew to survive a family that couldn't tolerate my voice. But I came back. Not for money, not for revenge, just for something simple. The truth with my name on it." The room held still. Even Russell said nothing. Even Jacob, fists clenched, remained silent. The judge nodded once. "Motion granted, identity reinstated. All estate transfers suspended pending federal investigation. This court recognizes Claire Elaine Whitmore as legally alive and in full capacity." The gavel fell. I didn't look at them when I left. They didn't reach for me either. But as I stepped through the courthouse doors into the afternoon light, Ivy followed. She didn't speak. She just slipped a folded note into my hand, written in her handwriting. "I couldn't undo what they did, but I believe you were never gone." For the first time, I felt the past crack just enough to allow me to move forward without dragging it. 6 months later, I opened the doors to a place called the Whitmore Room. I didn't keep the name because I forgave them. I kept it, so they could never pretend I didn't exist. It wasn't much. Just a converted walk-up in downtown New Haven with 3 rooms, 1 coffee machine, and a wall of corkboard where we let survivors post their truths on yellow sticky notes. Some were short. He said I imagined it. They told me I should be grateful. I believed them until now. Most ended with no punctuation, just open wounds turned outward so they could finally breathe. The work we did wasn't glamorous. Legal aid, resource matching, quiet advocacy for people erased by systems that should have protected them. Not all of them had families like mine. Some had it worse. But we shared one thing. We were all alive. And we weren't letting anyone write us out again. On the morning of our first workshop, a package arrived. No return address, wrapped in soft gray paper, hand-tied with a piece of ribbon I hadn't seen since childhood. Inside was a flat portfolio, no note, just a familiar sketch. My blazer, the one I designed at town.